Hello, everyone. Welcome to another 11 Warriors film study. I am Kyle Jones. Today, we're talking about the Ohio State Buckeyes' 37-9 victory over the Ohio Bobcats last weekend in the Shoe. Started off a little bit tense, tight at 13-3 at the half. Ultimately, the Buckeyes ran away with it, and actually on paper and upon a rewatch, really didn't feel as close as it may have in the moment, of course. That was triggered by a number of red zone issues, failed execution in the run game. Ohio State really dominated for large stretches of this game. It only looked that way during most of the second half, right? The fourth quarter, they really opened it up. But today we're going to dig into a few of those issues. I know the red zone has been a big talking point for Buckeye fans this week. We're going to dig into an example of that. We're not going to go in through all of them, quite a few red zone trips, right? We're going to take a look at one such example right at the beginning here. We're going to go through all three plays. What happened? What went wrong? Was it scheme? Was it execution? A little bit of everything. We're going to dig into that. We're also going to talk about some of what Ohio did, relying on their cover three that had both good and bad for the Bobcats. Really left them exposed against an Ohio State game plan that really attacked that cover three zone. We're going to dig into some of how they did that. And then ultimately, why were the Bobcats playing that cover three? Well, it helped them early on in the run game, but as we'll show, that became a bit of an issue for the Bobcats. The Buckeyes figured it out in the second half. We're going to show a little bit of what happened there. Now, what we're not going to talk about today is the Buckeye defense. Another great game from Matt Patricia's unit. We've talked about them a lot so far this year on Film Study, but never fear, next week is a bye week, so we're going to dig into that side of the ball a little bit more next Thursday. But as we said today, we're going to talk about red zone. We're going to talk about cover three beaters. We're going to talk about the run game issues. So let's dive in. All right, now this is first down in the red zone trip we're going to diagnose, and we're going to really break down all three plays that ultimately led to the field goal. This is the first down play call. It's a pass. What we're going to see first and foremost is Brandon Ennis is going to come in this short motion, and I want you to watch these two defenders because they look like they're in man coverage lined up over each of the receivers. But when this motion occurs, they're just going to bump down, right? It's almost like they're trading responsibilities, which from a football perspective, you can see Sayin looking at them. He's seeing, hey, this is a zone defense. They are not staying man-to-man. The outside guy isn't following Ennis, which this route that he's going to run would be a great man beater. So that's why Sayin's looking here before the ball's ever snapped, right? Because the actual concept, you can see Ennis is going to turn and he's going to whip right back towards the front pylon, while Tate and Smith are going to run two crossing routes. Now, because he sees zone, Sayin's not even going to look to the back of look over to that back pylon. Instead, he's just going to immediately look. And had this been man coverage, Ennis is wide open. The reason he's so wide open is because that corner who should have the flat was so worried about jamming Jeremiah Smith that he's completely abandoned his responsibility. Ennis looks wide open, but Sayin's not looking at him because that initial marker pre-snap told him this is a zone defense. Don't even bother looking across. He's going to look for the crossers. Now, there's a moment in this play where Smith is going to be open. Sayin seems to have all the time in the world. There's a defender standing in front of Smith. All he's got to do is loft this up high to the back of the end zone, and this is six. This is his star receiver. Go and get the ball. Instead, suddenly a man appears who's going to break the pocket, force Sayin out. He's scrambling, throws an inaccurate ball out of the back of the end zone, incomplete pass, second down. Now, let's watch it from the end zone view here for a second, because I want to talk about the protection and why this broke down. Now, all five of these offensive linemen, they're going to play a slide protection going to their right, our left, as we can see. Everybody's responsible to the gap to that direction. So to their right side, our left side, that's the gap they own. And the reason they can do that is because we've got this fake handoff. It's supposed to emulate counter. They've run counter a ton with that pulling backside tight end. But that tight end and running back, they're going to seal the opposite side. So that tight end, he's got Saravol's left-hand side, right? He's going to go pick up this defensive end. Great. And what we see is in the middle, you can see Montgomery and Saravel. They've got, their gap closed. They're blocking this defensive tackle. They've got him double teamed. There is nowhere to go. But for some reason, Saravol's feels number two coming off, and he abandons his responsibility. Montgomery's doing his job and sliding to the right, but Saravel comes off the play, and that leaves number 10, who had just been double teamed. He's stumbling. Suddenly, he's got a free path to the rusher, to the quarterback, incomplete pass. Okay, second down. Now they're going to completely change philosophies here. It's second and short. They're playing a MAC team at home. having trouble punching in. So what are they going to do? They're going to bring in 3 tight ends. You can see on the right-hand side, you've got Kaczmarek and Thurman on the line. Roberts is playing fullback here. It's a strong eye formation. You got a backside receiver. Now, Ryan Day talked on his press conference earlier this week about there was a play in the red zone where Sayin forgot to bring a guy in motion. This might have been that play because, as we'll see, Ohio State's a man short on this play. This is not a great play design otherwise. What do I mean by that? Let's run it through. Now we can see the defense is getting lined up. What's going to happen? We're going to get a lead fullback line kick out here. This is power. This is old school 2-back power. If you played the I formation back in the day, or you played in a wing tee, you probably ran this concept. And what you're seeing is it's much like counter, as we've seen, where you have a kick out block, in this case the fullback, and then you've got a backside puller who's going to lead through the hole, and that is the backside guard, right? Looks like it's going to work, right? We can see that 25, he's got the guy lined up here, and that's who Onyanwa, the pulling guard, is going to look for. But number 5 here, this defensive back, he's expecting power. Ohio State's run it in each game down the goal line. So as soon as he saw that pulling guard, he moved over, bumped down. So there's an extra guy to that front side. We're going to see he goes unblocked, right? Makes a great tackle. You hope Donaldson runs through that a little bit better. But this is the type of situation where suddenly when we look and we say, wait a second, Ohio State's a man short. There's an extra defender to that side of the ball. Right. You can already see number 5 is starting to bump down. He immediately read this play. They're seeing it coming. Ohio has watched the film. This is where you would say, ideally, you'd have Kaczmarek Roberts would be hitting 25. You might have Adolph, the wide receiver who could have motioned across. He might be the one now sealing number 2, who's a corner. That's a better situation. And then Onyanwa was leading through the hole, hitting number 5. That's not what happened. So we don't know exactly if this was the play Day was referring to, but regardless, Ohio State's a man short trying to run it, partly because of great preparation from Ohio. They're really well coached, but not what you want to see down by the red zone for Ohio State. All right, 3rd and goal. Now we're at about the 2-yard line, 1.5, depending on how you spot it. Make or break time. They've still got heavy personnel, right? There's still 3 tight ends in there, but they've swapped out Adolph this time for number 4. And what we're going to see is that guy, number 4, down at the bottom of the screen, he's going to be left all alone with that corner. Now, that is ISO ball. That is one-on-one man coverage. This cannot be a zone. This is man up all the way. Sayin sees this well before the ball is snapped. He's already made his decision. This is a relief, meaning they're running a run play, and you're going to see the offensive line blocking. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before the ball is ever snapped, Sayin has already made up his mind. I am taking this. I've got the best receiver in the country, one-on-one against a MAC corner. I'm going to throw it up there to him. Now, the concept, as we can see, it's a split zone, meaning Roberts is going to kick out the end here, and it's up to Donaldson to just kind of find that gap. It's a zone scheme, but he's never getting this football, right? This is saying he's going to drop back and throw a fade. Now, look at all that space to the backside. Saying he's got to overthrow this to the outside. Smith does a great job getting that outside position. There's plenty of room for this ball to land. Unfortunately, it's a little short. Not going to get it, gets knocked out by the corner, incomplete. Again, we're going to watch it from the end zone view, but I want to highlight exactly what we saw. Now, this probably isn't going to work as a run play, but when we zoom in, I apologize for this, how grainy it is. We're really zooming in. Look how low that ball is. Smith is way above this guy. The corner's head is at his belly button. Now, his arms can get up, right? They can get up into his numbers, and that's exactly how this ball gets knocked away. This ball needs to be up above Smith's head. This needs to be a little bit higher. This is the kind of thing that takes work, it takes reps, it takes practice. It's also really hard and a low percentage throw. There are many people who never want to see the goal line fade, regardless of how favorable your matchup is. I don't love it as a 3rd down play, to be honest with you. I'd love to see this. If you want to take a one-on-one shot with your guy, do it on 1st down, because this is a tough throw to make, and the corner makes the play. We can start by seeing the motion here from Kaczmarek is going to draw down this safety into a 3-weak roll, right? This is going to go from a 2-deep look to a 1-high safety look, which is going to signal to Sayin right away this is cover 3. Now, the route concept is a cover 3 beater. This is a spacing concept. We can see it's all these curls spread horizontally across the field. Sayan's read here, he essentially picks a side, and then he's going to read the curl flat defender. Now, as that safety comes down, the first thing you notice is you've got 3 of these zone defenders are all bucketed together. They're all huddled closely together into the boundary, which means that Sayan's going to correctly pick the wide side of the field, right? You can see it's a 3 deep, 4 under, but those 3 defenders are already all bunched in together at the top of the screen. So he is just reading this curl flat defender who is understandably breaking outside, looking at the most outside guy, which is, in this case, Innis. But that leaves this wide open space for Tate to hit. This is a well-designed play. It's a all curls, spacing concept. Again, we can watch it one more time as it happens, pretty quickly, right? We get the safety coming down, spacing concept once again, reading that curl flat defender. He's not reading a progression, he's reading a defender. We got all these guys bucketed together. He looks to his left, sees it's 3 deep, 4 under, and again, makes that correct read on that flat defender. Well executed, something that they've clearly practiced and something that we've seen a lot from Ohio State early in this season. Okay, we're going to talk about another cover 3 beater, something we saw from Ohio State a lot on Saturday night. Now, again, we're going to see this safety creeping up here, right? He's rolling to the boundary. It's a weak cover 3 roll with that safety. He's the boundary curl flat defender. Now, the knock against a lot of cover 3 beaters and zone beaters is that they're a lot of quick game. They're 3-step drops and the ball's out underneath and short. And so defenses like that because they can easily corral and limit the explosiveness. Now, what's great about this concept is it's a nice complement to the one we just saw. Even though it looks pretty similar, it's still a mirrored concept. The quarterback's going to pick which side he goes through, and it's all essentially curls, right? You're working to the outside, and then you've got you're underneath with your halfback if everything's covered. Now, the difference about this in the last play is this is a 7-step drop. So Sayan's going to get a lot more depth on this drop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hitch, look. And as he looks, sure, he gets that cover 3. This is as generic and base a cover 3 as you're going to see, right? That free safety right in the middle, 4 underneath. Now, those underneath defenders really aren't there. If you want to dump it off to your tailback, you're going to get a really short gain, but that's not where Julian Sayan's going. What he is looking at is he's looking at number 4 to the top. Now look at the cushion. This is great route running by Smith to stop and turn. He's going to come back to the football. He's going to actually catch this inside the 50. He's got his foot on the opposite 45, but he's got so much space. Look at the bottom of the screen. The difference between that route and Carnell Tate, that is both the respect for Smith. They don't want to get burned. Actually, one of the corners just had Smith run right by him on the first drive of the game in this same coverage. So they're worried about getting beat deep, but he's playing over the top. And now this is a great concept because you're beating zone, cover 3 zone, but it's an easy throw and catch, especially when it's 4. Look, when he catches the ball, so much space, catches at the 50, big gain for Ohio State. One more time, we can see the safety rolling down. We've got our mirrored concept. The quarterback just gets to pick. Now he drops, sees the coverage, sees it's cover 3, and now he's got a wide open guy. He can deliver a ball in rhythm. Now, as the night went on, Ohio State became much more aggressive about attacking that cover 3 defense. Again, we're seeing the defense in a cover 2 shell, right? 2 deep safeties. But what we're going to notice is we're going to get this type of orbit motion, which is something that we've seen a lot from the Buckeyes lately. We saw it a bunch the week prior. But we see Carnell Tate coming in the backfield. He had taken a handoff for an end around earlier in the game. But this time it's a play action fake. But immediately what we see right away, we got those 3 deep safeties again, right? We got a free safety sitting in the middle of the field. 2 corners. They're both playing with outside leverage. That's going to be important in a minute, I promise. And what we've got is 3 receivers running deep. Now, this is a progression read for Julian Sayan, right? He's going to have Max Clare running a deep corner. That's where his start. That's his first read. Claire, he doesn't really have the speed, and he's probably not going to outrun it, especially with a safety that close. You're throwing into the boundary here. Then his second read, he's going to work over the middle to Brandon Innis. Now, if there's 2 deep safeties in this, Innis's job is to make that route a post route and split those 2 safeties. But he reads correctly and expecting this to be cover 3. he's going to flatten this out and turn this into more of an over route. And his goal is actually to get this safety to come down and flatten this out. And the reason for that is you might think, why would Innis want to be covered, right? Why would he want to drag the safety in? Well, that's because it leaves a ton of space right behind him. That safety now just vacated his responsibility, which allows for a deep ball to the worst possible person that Ohio could have running on this deep ball. That's Jeremiah Smith, of course. Now, that corner, like I said, is playing outside leverage. Why is he playing outside, right? You can see Smith is on the inside of that Safe Light logo. The corner's on the opposite side. The reason for that is the corner he doesn't have any help to that outside. He is expecting that free safety to be standing right in the middle of this highlighted area here. That's the middle center fielder, right? But that center fielder is now occupied by Innis. Sayin properly, reads that, he identifies it and uncorks a deep ball. He's going to hit his star receiver right before the ball even arrives, though. Innis, and this we're going to see this a couple times. Ultimate teammate. Maybe this is why he's a captain, right? Ball's not even caught yet, and he's already got his hand up, signaling this is going to be a touchdown. This is going to be a big play, and sure enough, it is. Okay, this is our last example today. We're going to talk about a play that actually works against multiple coverages, is probably called because they expected cover 3. We're going to see the Bobcats actually play a little bit different of a coverage. This is the next drive after the Smith touchdown we just saw. We're going to see a 3-by-1 set actually moves into an empty look, right? So as they get into empty, we're going to see the Bobcats are actually going to play what's called a quarter half. We can see it at the top of the screen. They're playing a cover 2 essentially, with one safety playing a deep half, right? 3/2, and then 4/3 to the bottom, where they're playing quarters, right? So those two highlighted defenders, they're responsible for number 1 and number 2 vertically. And that means, their rules can typically change, but that's anywhere from 5 to 8 yards you would consider. If they're running upfield, that's vertically, and that turns into essentially man coverage, right? Now, what we're going to see here from Ohio State is what's called a Mills concept. Now, what we're going to talk about here in a second is you've got on the bottom here, we've got the two highlighted players, that's Carnell Tate and the cornerback. They're essentially one-on-one locked up because Tate has released vertically, as we just talked about. And then Innis is going to run right behind the tight end there, who's on a little bit of a stick route, and he's going to run another over. And this is like a deep dig. And the reason that you run this play is this was something that the old ball coach, Steve Spurrier, ran a ton of in the Fun and Gun Florida 90s, because what's going to happen is that over route, similar to the concept we just saw before, but because they're on the same side, they're really close, that over route's going to pull the free safety down. This worked against old school cover 3 safeties all the time, and that leads to the big ball. We've got a big post. Tate does a great job of getting the corner turned around with a little bit of a dino stick here, and then he opens his hip to the outside, turns back to the inside, and again, that free safety's running with Innis over the middle of the field, and that leaves all this space for Sayin to throw a great deep ball, 49 yards to Carnell Tate. Now, we're going to watch this from the end zone view. It's going to take a second because of all the movement, right? We get our shift out, but we're going to be able to see actually happening the view that Sayin has here, right? So Claire runs a little stick. We get Innis running that over route, and look at how hard that safety's driving on that dig route, right? He knows there's nobody else there. If they throw that dig, there's not going to be anybody to catch him. So that safety, this is actually playing his responsibility. He doesn't have the deep middle, right? They're playing, quarters. This is cover 4 essentially. But as that safety hits, all that room behind him is wide open now because he's just following Innis wherever Innis goes. Innis is running that over, and that leaves this space for Sayin. He actually, gets hit a little bit, but throws a nice deep ball. Once again, Innis, before the ball is even caught, he's celebrating. It's a big play for Ohio State that really kind of sealed the game, but great execution in the second half from this passing game. So we talked a lot about the cover 3 that Ohio ran pretty regularly on Saturday night. Now, you might be asking, why did they run so much cover 3? Ohio State seemed to have no problem picking it apart. A lot of it had to do with the effect it had on the Buckeye ground game, especially early on. Now, here's an example of what I mean. Now, you're going to see number 5, the safety, he's going to come up, and you're going to see 15, the defensive end is going to slant inside really hard, because number 5 is going to essentially create an extra man in the box. Now, he's lining up deep, so as Ohio State's accounting for him in the run game and thinking about their blocking assignments, they're not expecting him to be there, right? They're thinking that he's going to be lined up deep. He doesn't belong in the run game count. Now, What we're going to get is a counter tray, a GH or a GY, depending on how you call it, where the guard, Montgomery, and then the tight end, who's the H or the Y, depending on how you label it, they're going to pull around. Now, Montgomery, his job is to kick out 15 the end, and then Kazmarek should be getting getting the first guy leading through the hole, sealing, if you will. So pull and seal is what we're looking for. And that's really what happens, right? Where we get one guy coming back. Let's rewind it here. We get one guy who's going to kick out 15. Now, 15 basically intercepts Montgomery a little early, and there's two defenders now there that Kazmarek has to choose from. He takes the first cloth he sees, right? Who's the first defender you see, that's who you hit because he's the most immediate threat. But when he does that, that leaves the gap wide open, right? So we can watch this one more time. We're going to get safety coming up, and suddenly that changes the arithmetic for the run game count. Ohio State's down a man, at least in the direction of the play. We get two pullers. And again, Montgomery does a good job. He takes the first guy he has. But again, there's two defenders for one blocker in this case. That's why Ohio kept playing cover 3, gave him that extra body in the box that Ohio State just early on wasn't able to account for. Now, one of the other reasons Ohio State struggled to run the football, especially early on Saturday night, was some of the movement that we saw from Ohio on the defensive line. They obviously moved their secondary around, bring extra bodies into the box, but they also did a bunch of slanting. Now, this is another counter play. We're highlighting the guard and the tight end. They're going to pull across. It's a GH counter, right? But what we're going to see here is we're going to see a slant with a backside blitz, right? You can see the entire defensive line blitz it. They're going to slant across, a gap to their right. So on the left side, we can see the defensive end 15. He's trying to cross the face of Daniels. 10, you can see he's trying to cross the face of the guard and get it, into the center. And this is a great way to disrupt gap schemes because pullers and gap blockers, they're really trying to block. A lot of people call it a man blocking zone or a scheme because typically these blockers, they're looking and saying, I've got to block that man. Now, when those men move, that makes it much more difficult, and that's what we're going to see here, right? So we've got 25 is going to actually step up and blitz. Now, Ohio State's actually going to have the right blocking. They've got the right body count because you can see Tate with his really short, nasty split there. He's actually going to get up to number 5 and does a really good job blocking. Tate's been excellent blocking this year. Saturday night was no different. Then you're going to see in the black circles there, Montgomery, he should be able to take out that blitzing linebacker 25. And then if Kazmarek's got his head on the swivel and he's identifying those blockers correctly, he should be able to lead up and seal 24. And really, Ohio State should have this blocked up pretty well. But that's not what happens. Instead, what we see is Kazmarek and Montgomery go block the same guy. Now, and that's because 25 is who initially, when they lined up, right, we can go back and we can see what was this alignment initially, right? 25 is who Kazmarek's expecting to have to block. He's expecting 15 to come straight upfield, and that's who Montgomery's going to have. 25 is going to be waiting there for him to block. That is not what we see. Instead, what we see is, right, they both counter on, and that leaves 24 completely unblocked to make an easy play in the gap. Now, again, we'll watch this one more time. We're going to watch these guys come through. We can see, again, this is who they should have. That's not what happens. Two guys blocking the same guy, leaving one man completely unblocked. These were those mistakes we saw executionally. These are things that can be cleaned up, however, and we saw that as the night went on. Now, this is a much better example of Ohio State running counter. What we're going to see is the tight end coming in motion here. He's going to set up. We've got what we can see is, a one-by-one ace formation with a tight end on either side in line, but I want to watch the backside in this case, which is on our left. The offense is right. The right guard and right tackle, Onyanwa and Daniels, they're going to be the players we're going to highlight initially because they're going to pull across on this counter play, right? So keep an eye on these guys. So the ball snapped, but first off, one of the interesting wrinkles we saw, I haven't seen this much from Ohio State. You're going to see Donaldson in the back, and we saw this numerous times on Saturday night. He's going to hop around the backside to take this counter. Now, I think that is to give more time and improving the rhythm, allowing his blocks to set up. Now, the front side, from Hinsman to Sareveld, they're going to block down. They're going to block inside and seal their guys inside. Now, on the front side, Kazmarek's going to go take out the corner there. But again, the first block we're going to get, Onyanwa is going to kick out this end, right? He's just going to knock him straight out to the side. And then our second block is Daniels coming through, and he's really leading the back in this case. And he's going to come up and seal 25. Now, you can also see Sarivold there. We're going to watch him in a second on the second time through. But this is really well blocked, perfectly executed. Again, the front side sealing. We're going to have these two guys are going to lead you around. But watch Sarivold too. All right, 67. He's on the right side of your screen. He's going to hit 44 and make sure that that's sealed inside, and he's going to work up to the linebacker, which is really impressive, which in this case is going to be the weak side backer, number 24, right? So again, sealing 44 as Onyanwa kicks out. Daniel's going to lead through, but 67 is going to read this linebacker coming way over the top and actually just drive him right out of the play. Really well done from Ohio State. Now, one of the schematic evolutions we saw from Ohio State as the night went along really came after halftime. Now we've seen that safety rolling down and what it was doing to the blocking schemes for Ohio State. They weren't able to account for those numbers because of that late movement. And, a lot of the game now is played before the snap. It's really about who is the one to make the last move, who is the one, and then sometimes that even happens post-snap, right, with a lot of the disguise we see, especially for the Buckeye defense with Matt Patricia now. But what Ohio State wanted to do is instead of allowing Ohio to really dictate this late movement, they started doing it themselves. So they start with this, 2x2, 4 wide formation, but these are two tight ends. And so we're going to watch here as Kazmarik's going to motion in, right? He's coming from the left side. He's going to line up now as an inline tight end. Then from the other slot, we're going to have Max Clare. He's going to motion in. And suddenly, look at that. We've got a double wing tight end set. This is a big, heavy run set. And that's going to open up, everybody remembers this play for the burst and the great movement from Bo Jackson. This was one of the first plays of the second half. Really one of those places that cemented him, I think, in the conversation this entire week, especially here on 11 Warriors. But I want to talk a little bit about the adaptations and the way Ohio State was able to react to what Ohio was doing. Now, we get that first movement. What do we see? Look at the middle linebacker. He's immediately calling it out, right? As that move happens, that means Ohio has to adjust. They've got their own calls. They've got their things. When the offense changes formation, they're making their own moves, right? So then we get the second move. Okay, suddenly the opposite side, well, this changes our call, right? You can see 5, the safety. You can see the other linebacker. They're not looking at the ball. You can see in the backfield, Sagan's clapping his hands saying it's time to go. The defensive secondary, the back 7, they're still worried about getting lined up when this ball is snapped. Like they've barely been able to get up there. Now that makes it much easier because they're playing on the back foot, and what we see is great execution then from the offensive line, partly because of that defensive being on the back foot. Hinsman here does a great job. This is just an inside zone essentially where you're going to see Hinsman help on the defensive tackle, and then he's going to climb and seal 25. Of course, Bo Jackson does a lot of the work on the play himself, making a couple guys miss in the open field. Great run here. But a lot of this you can tie back to not just the great execution on the blocking scheme, but also that movement up front early on.